With the holidays come and gone, some of you might have picked up a Sony A7 IV. And maybe you're wondering, why this camera? Especially now with it being about 5 years old. And that's a fair question, and I hope to get to that video soon. But for now, I want you to help get the best looking footage possible out of the camera that you already have. So if your A7 IV footage doesn't look as smooth or cinematic as you hoped, don't panic. It's usually not you, and it's definitely not the camera. It's just how you set it up. This camera is extremely capable, but straight out of the box, the settings can feel overwhelming, even if you've used cameras before. I remember feeling that way too. By the end of this video, I want you to know the exact settings that I use to get clean, natural looking footage without overthinking any of it. Whether you're shooting talking head videos, reviews, or just everyday content, this is a really solid starting point. Recording format. I keep this pretty simple. I shoot at 4K at 24 frames per second. That's kind of my default. For YouTube, talking head stuff, reviews, it looks just right. The motion feels natural and it matches what most people are used to seeing. One of the big reasons I stick with 24 FPS is consistency. Lighting behaves more predictably, motion blur looks normal, and everything just feels easier to manage. For file format, I use XAVC-S 4K. In a real-world use, it gives me great image quality without huge file sizes or slowing my computer down. There are also higher quality options like XAVC-HS or XAVC-SI, and I have used them, but honestly for most workflows they're overkill and just make editing slower. If you're just getting started, this choice alone can save you a lot of frustration. Once that's set, the next thing that really affects the look is how the image is processed. Picture profile. Picture profiles sound intimidating at first, and I get it. It feels like one more thing that you're supposed to understand before you can even hit record. But in practice, they're actually one of the easiest ways to make your footage look better without adding more work. I use S-Cinetone. For me, it just works. The skin tones look good, contrast feels natural, and the footage already looks polished straight out of the camera. I'm not trying to commit myself to any heavy color grading or a complicated workflow every time I shoot. I just want the camera to do a good job up front. There are flatter profiles like S-Log3 that give you more flexibility, but they also demand more precision and more time in post. If you're not grading regularly, S-Cinetone keeps things simple and consistent. And honestly, that's the goal here. Less time fixing color, more time actually creating. Once your frame rate and picture profiles are set, exposure gets a lot easier. Or as I've said many times, predictable. This is one of those things I don't mess with once it's dialed in. I keep my shutter speed at double my frame rate. So if I'm shooting 24 frames per second, my shutter speed stays at 1/50. If I'm shooting at 60, it stays over 1/120. That's what keeps motion looking smooth and natural. One common mistake I see is using shutter speed to control brightness. It works, but it also makes motion look really weird, and yeah, once you lock shutter speed in and leave it alone, everything else gets easier. From there I control brightness using aperture and ISO. Indoors, that usually means opening up the lens or bumping ISO a bit. Outdoors, instead of touching shutter speed, that means that I would use an ND filter. I personally run a K&F Concept Black diffusion mist filter, and it's honestly one of those things I rarely take off the lens. With exposure stable, autofocus can really do its thing. I use continuous autofocus with face and eye tracking turned on. For talking head videos and in general filming, it's extremely reliable. And honestly, if you bought a Sony, you probably already know this, but the autofocus really is as good as people say it is. Being able to trust it means I can focus on framing, lighting, and what I'm actually saying instead of worrying about whether the shot's sharp. White balance is one of those things that feels small, but it makes a huge difference. It controls how accurate your colors look, especially skin tones. And when it's off, footage can look a little too warm or a little too green, even if exposure is perfect. That's why I don't leave white balance on auto. I set it manually so colors stay consistent from clip to clip. Depending on the situation, I'll either set a manual Kelvin value or do a custom white balance setting. If the lighting is controlled and consistent, Kelvin is quick and reliable. If the lighting is mixed or changing, custom white balance gives me the best results. Here's a new tip that I learned recently and now I use all the time. When I do a custom white balance, I use the inside of the Sony body cap. It's a neutral gray and it makes the whole process really fast and easy. Getting white balance right in camera means less fixing in post and more footage that already looks finished. This is the setup I keep coming back to, not because it's perfect, but because, well, you know the word, predictable. Once these settings are dialed in, the Sony A7 IV just becomes a dependable tool. Anything that removes friction from the process helps you stay focused on the creative side. Alright, thanks guys, and I'll see you in the next one.